Welcome to this week's Let's Talk Data podcast. Our guest, Ruth Ray, Data Strategy Director at Cifas,
a counter-fraud organisation that brings together public and private sector across 15 or so different sectors to share data to help eliminate fraud.
We discuss the challenges and rewards of being a woman in the data field.
Actually being really clear about what you offer and being really sure about how you communicate that.
Ruth also shares her thoughts on the prevalence of bias in AI models.
We need to be really staying cognizant of where technology is going to make sure that we can leverage them where it makes sense to, understand them, and just also make sure we've got a policy position on some of them as well, rather than diving in.
A must listen to. Ruth, let's talk data.
I'd love to.
So firstly, thank you for coming. I know you're extremely busy. And before we get into it, I just wanted to say that we obviously met at the Women in Data event.
We did.
When was that now?
Was it a year ago? Almost a year ago, maybe.
Yeah. Was that the first time you've been?
It was.
Right.
It was a brilliant event. In fact, one of the best ones I've been to, both in terms of content and how it was organised.
Yeah.
Obviously a blessing that we sat down next to each
Yeah,
other.
I think I was like, hello, is anyone sat here?
Yeah, so that was fantastic. And just such a good way to get women together who are all sort of talking the same language and probably don't have the platform to do so the rest of the time.
Absolutely.
Probably surrounded by, you know, a lot of males.
Yes.
And actually feel quite comfortable in a much more female-centric environment. And it feels really good to be doing something that's kind of like for us.
It does.
So, I loved the event.
Yeah, it was a great event. And I know a lot was going on, but what was your favourite part or your key takeaway from the event? I know there was a lot.
There were a lot. That some of the speakers were just mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. But definitely some of the breakouts were really good and lots of really key questions asked in those. It gave you a bit of perspective about what other people are up to. Mm-hmm. And I think it just takes you out of your comfort zone that I often feel like I'm working in my bubble. Yeah. But it was really good just to sort of realise the skill and expertise out there in a lot of other different sectors that are really relevant to my area of business. I'm going to say, though, that my favourite bit was just building Lego in the Lego section. I built some amazing flower Lego and it just felt like all of us were just kind of like bonding together over Lego building.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was brilliant.
No, it was amazing. And then Dame Stephanie Shirley at the end was signing books. Did you get a copy?
I didn't, but I knew you had.
Yes.
Very keen to hear how that's been.
I know. Well, I didn't have a role model until I went to that event, and I was like, she is the pinnacle.
Just epic. And Jill Scott, I mean, you know, a great end to the event.
Yeah.
Really inspirational. You know, super content and speaker. So I loved it, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, to be back there again.
Me too.
In March.
I know there's a ballot, isn't there?
I know, nerve-wracking.
I know. Drew's entered as well, so hopefully, because last time she did and I just went, so maybe this time she'll go without me, but that would be fine.
Yeah, between you.
Yes. So before we get into counter-fraud and data and the relevance of that in the industry, could you just give us an insight into your journey and how you got to where you are?
Sure. So I was probably in that classic scenario where I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. You know, I'd always been a pretty sort of, you know, okay at school, did, you know, relatively well, but didn't really know what I wanted to do as a career. Mm-hmm. So I did a graduate management trainee scheme when I left university, just as a way to get into business, thinking, well, that's probably covering most bases. And in honesty, I probably got promoted far too quickly, and I was in a senior leadership position a bit too early. So I was only 22. Yeah. Had quite a big area of responsibility. And probably over the first sort of few years realised that, you know, while I was passionate about what I did, I wasn't passionate enough to make that my career. And I didn't feel good about what I was doing on a daily basis. So I decided to retrain as an analyst and started working for the police, which was such a big change, not least from private sector to public sector. But retraining as an analyst really sort of honed in on probably some of my data skills and skills that I didn't really know that I had until then. There was a brilliant array of people there, lots of people to learn from. And so I spent the next few years there and ended up working in their covert operations unit, which was fascinating.
Yeah.
And definitely feel the feel-good factor, doing something for the greater good.
I bet.
And then, but I wanted career progression. I was quite sort of driven, and I wanted fast paced.
Yeah.
And so I was very sort of focused on how do I get to the next step, next rung of the ladder. So over the next few years, I sort of moved on towards senior analyst positions and then into a manager role. And that's when I came to London and started working for the Insurance Fraud Bureau,
Right.
In a manager role, managing one of their big data products. And it was a fraud data product for all of their members. And so my sort of data journey has been, it feels as if it's been a fair few steps, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and quite diverse. But absolutely has all come together into my most recent role, where I effectively lead on data strategy for Cifas. Which is a counter-fraud organisation that brings together public and private sector across 15 or so different sectors to share data to help eliminate fraud.
Right, okay.
And financial crime.
Very interesting. Yeah. So in terms of you're a senior leader now, so data strategy director, was that always the plan, or was it organic growth, would you say?
I'm always definitely all about the organic, in all senses of the term. I'm not one of these people that has a 5-year plan.
Yeah, okay.
I like to let things happen naturally and see what opportunities are presented. And actually, that's exactly what has happened over the years. I've taken promotions where they've presented themselves. I've been very fortunate along that way to have some amazing mentors and leaders that have given me opportunities and challenged me. Yeah. Not always very comfortable, but really, really great experience. And I think the more you do that, the more you find out about yourself and where your strengths are.
Yeah.
And I'm sure at one time, I've always really enjoyed sort of customer relations and sort of the more stakeholder management side of things. And then as time has gone on, I've realised, you know what, that's not necessarily where I want all of my effort to be. And perhaps the strength is in a different area. So no, I've definitely moved around a lot and just taken on opportunities as they've come my way. Yeah,
amazing. And as being a female in the space, have you had any specific challenges, would you say, to being a female?
Yeah, I have. And again, not all sort of boohoo, poor me. Yeah. A lot of them have just been sort of very, as my mother would say, character building.
Yes.
That particularly in the data space, and particularly sort of data science and engineering, it is incredibly male-centric. And I do feel like females in this space, particularly in a leadership role, need to really fight for the recognition and airtime, actually. But I definitely fight my corner. I'm not particularly shy in coming forwards. And I'm always quite proud of the fact that I've got quite good strategic vision, I think.
Yeah.
And so, whereas I might not necessarily be particularly technically savvy myself, but I like to think that I'm a good communicator. I have strategic vision as to where, a business is going and where I can help. And where I think my skills and expertise can be utilised, and where I can lean on people around me to provide a bit more of a breadth of knowledge. That's certainly what I'm doing in my current role now.
So I was going to say, how did you overcome those challenges? Was it to be brave and to fight and believe in what you were saying ultimately?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And even when faced with, unkind comments and probably a lack of confidence in me from other people. I haven't let that stop me. I've always just sort of ploughed on and worked really hard. A lot of people, of course, work hard, but I've put the hours in. I've showed that I'm dedicated. I've showed that I'm in it for the long haul, and I'm just really passionate about what I do. And I think women sometimes aren't very good at really showcasing where their value can be embedded into a business, for example. So it's actually being really clear about what you offer and being really sure about how you communicate that.
Yeah, and having conviction in that, because as soon as self-doubt creeps in, then you're not going to be in a position to fight, are you?
Yeah, but I think self-doubt is really normal.
Yeah.
We talk an awful lot in the women in data space about imposter syndrome. And I think until recently I thought, I don't have imposter syndrome. But actually, do you know what? I probably do, especially as I don't consider myself to be a techie. And in certain circles, that can make you feel insecure and that you don't know what you're talking about. But actually, the strength is in being able to translate some of the more technical elements of roles to stakeholders and to more the general public or consumers, the rest of the business who aren't so technically savvy, and make them feel really good about that, how they have an understanding about what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to delve into this as well in terms of the techie v non-techie. What skills do you think, soft skills then, are important if you haven't come from the engineering background, say?
Definitely communication. It's a real cliche in a way, but communication is absolutely key. You really need to know your audience when you're talking to people and really understand what is that audience interested in? What's their motivation? What do they want out of sort of data or a project? How can I help them be really good at what they do? So I can relate in my current role to that now, where I've been delivering a lot of sort of core data solutions to market over the last couple of years that really help our members fight fraud and financial crime, make huge savings and prevent fraud losses. But, when you're talking about a data solution, you have to start by listening and listening to what members want and how they're going to use that data and what it's like on the front line to be dealing with fraudulent applications and other such day-to-day sort of grind that they're going through. So I think it's really key to have those sort of people skills that allow you to connect and understand their challenges before driving forwards to effectively deliver a solution which actually may be no good to anybody. It's the elephant in the room and useless. So really key.
And what about storytelling? Do you feel that's a large part of what you do?
It is, in the sense that it's sort of creating a need for a product. And I've had to do that since going into Cifas, where I came into the organisation, which has got an absolutely fantastic foundation in fraud and economic crime prevention. But actually, there were some real opportunities that I saw immediately going into the business of areas where my experience and my sort of skills and things I've done in previous roles lent themselves perfectly to just moving the business on. And the C-suite have been absolutely fantastic and very supportive that I would tell this story to them about, although I didn't necessarily describe it like that, but you tell a story as to where I thought there was a fantastic opportunity to enhance what we were delivering to our members. And they were like, yeah, that sounds great. Okay, crack on.
Amazing.
And so given free rein, and I have to say, full credit, that's happened quite a number of times through my career where I've seen a really good opportunity. I've highlighted and demonstrated where I thought there could be value to the business, and the business has listened and supported me and allowed me just to crack on and get it done.
Amazing. Once you get that yes, is it a bit like, oh, okay, I thought you were going to say no and I was ready to fight and now I've got to go and do it.
Yeah, definitely. But again, I tend to find it quite easy to sort of start working out, okay, what do we actually need to do to get that done? While I do have that strategic focus, I'm not necessarily a visionary personality. My first response to a task is, right, how do we actually get that done? And so working out the sort of different work streams and the milestones needed to actually get us to delivery, and then try and cajole everybody and get everyone together to agree, again, use of a complete cliche, but bringing everyone on the journey about what we're going to deliver and why, what's in it for them, what does it mean for them in terms of resourcing, in terms of benefits, in terms of, helping sort of the broader financial crime area or whatever you're doing. And all this translates into other industries really easily. But that's really key to actually then delve into getting it done. It's all very well getting the yes and the go ahead. You need to actually just get it done. And often
deliver
with very minimal staff and support. It's, a lot of it is rolling your sleeves up, getting your hands dirty and just doing stuff myself.
Absolutely.
And not sitting there going, well, sorry, that's not in my job description. I just want to get it done.
So in terms of counter fraud, that arena, how has the reliance on data changed over the years, would you say?
Do you know what? I actually don't think it has an awful lot,
okay.
in a general sense. I think I remember going to conferences, probably 15 years ago, and the topics were, how do we share more data and more effectively? And we're still having the same conversations.
Right, yeah.
And I think it's more about actually leveraging the right people in the organisation to try and help you get things done. Of course, it's really difficult sharing data across organisations, particularly across sector,
Of course.
and particularly across jurisdictions. We're now looking at how we can facilitate data sharing outside of the UK as well, which is really important, particularly in line with the government's fraud strategy. But you need to take small steps, and I think it's ever more important because fraud clearly isn't going away.
No, gets more and more sophisticated.
Yeah, exactly. These criminals are always a step ahead, always taking advantage of new technologies.
Yeah.
And actually, the only way of actually having an impact, I think, is making sure that you have fraud practitioners at the forefront a lot of these new technological initiatives to make sure that we're thinking about, okay, how could this go horribly wrong?
Yes.
and get ahead of it.
Yeah. Okay.
And we may have been missing a trick there in the past.
Okay.
So perhaps that should be a focus going forwards.
So what trends have you seen in the crimes committed then within fraud? And have you got ahead of any of those?
We're always trying. I mean, it is changing, and inevitably you've always got that scenario where you push the balloon down in one place and it pops up in another. You just hope that it pops up somewhere that isn't within your remit. But inevitably, Cifas services almost 800 members now across all the different sectors, public, private sector. And so it's always going to hit our members somewhere. And so that's why we need to be super on it in terms of making sure all the different sort of data solutions we provide are relevant and applicable and impactful to all those that use it across whatever sector they're working in. Because also criminals aren't particularly picky. They they might
opportunity.
Absolutely, yeah. But in the same vein as my own career, like if you see an opportunity, go for it. And they are ruthless. And so therefore that's where actually as a collective we are so much stronger in terms of trying to share data to cut it off at its feet.
Yeah.
So we do an awful lot of member engagement around sort of working out what's going on out there, what are the underlying trends, and then trying to design solutions in collaboration with our members to meet that need. So at the moment, I'm delivering a solution that will help to share data about those that have been the victim of authorised push payment fraud. Scammed by really ruthless fraudsters who will befriend and profess to be in some kind of romantic relationship with someone, an investment scam, ringing people on their mobiles to pretend that they're from HMRC or the police or something, forcing them to move their money. And it's coercion. It's ruthless manipulation and coercion, effectively to drain any funds they have from any bank account. So what we're trying to do is put a database together that allows all of our members visibility of who are the most vulnerable or susceptible individuals to that. And if they've been scammed once, there may be a chance that their data will be shared and scammed again. And so it's really giving them visibility of who out there is susceptible and what safeguarding measures can they put in place to protect them from having the same thing happen to them again. And they often these people are terrible at getting them to drain one bank account, going to another bank account, getting out a loan, credit cards, all under the guise of some sort of relationship or, fantastic investment opportunity.
Yeah, it's scary.
So we're seeing an awful lot there, and that's probably quite pertinent because there's an awful lot in the press at the moment about APP fraud, because it's very personal to people as well. It's devastating to individuals. It's not just the financial loss. This is absolutely devastating people's lives, losing confidence to even walk out of the door every day as a result of being duped by someone. And there's a lot of shame associated, understandably, but it's not right to be ashamed, and these things need to be tackled. And the payment systems regulator is currently putting in some some regulation to make sure that those people get refunded in the new year. But there's more we can do. But some of these trends we have to stay ahead of. And that's why I'm also pushing quite strongly as part of my role at Cifas to enhance our analytics capability so that we can start being a bit more predictive about where these fraud trends are going, and therefore try to be ahead of the game rather than responsive.
Yeah, I know whiplash was a big one, wasn't it?
It was, but the insurance industry, they've done an amazing job to really reduce that quite strongly with an awful lot of hard work in the OIC space, and it has worked. And what it's actually done is reduced a lot of the supplier-led fraud or sharp practice, where there may be representatives that were making an awful lot of money out of these claims and encouraging claims from individuals. And it feels as if there's an awful lot of progress being made in that space. But of course, those same individuals are now moving on to other areas, and they may well be representing APP claimants very soon.
Okay.
So we need to stay alive to that.
You are right. It's like, have you been in an accident? Have you this? And it's just everywhere, isn't it? It's ubiquitous on the radio, on the TV, and it is targeting people. You start to think, have I? I don't know. You tell me.
And the other thing is, it makes people think that if they don't claim, that they're a bit of a, they're being had. They're missing out on free money. And that wasn't what the insurance sector was ever supposed to be about.
Of course not.
And I think it's really important to send the message that this is a very small minority of people that are making fraudulent claims. And there's an awful lot of work being done also around sort of nudge theory, around how do we encourage you and I, the consumer, to act in a moral way, even when we're faced with people that will have us claiming or doing something that's probably out of character. And I think it's important to send that message that not everyone is doing this. It's not right. It's not okay. And actually, we all end up paying for it anyway in the long term.
Of course we will. That's the thing, isn't it? Okay, so let's talk about data and intelligence. So many use the term data and intelligence interchangeably. Could you clarify the distinction between the two, especially in the context of counter-fraud efforts?
Yeah, so I guess if you're getting very specific about it, intelligence is often data. It's various bits of data. However, intelligence is about taking a piece of information and transforming it into something you can use to take action. Whereas data, we can think of things like data insights. Data about the fraud and financial crime problem is really useful to provide us insights into what's going on and, again, where the fraud problem might change. Intelligence is much more about taking that information and making it a sort of tangible piece of intelligence so that you can identify who is doing what, with whom and how to try and defeat the problem and stop it as it comes through the door. So we're currently developing a new intelligence service which will see us providing tactical intelligence to our members about people and what they're up to, with whom, what the connections are, who they're targeting, so that our members can sort of be better informed and actually go out and take action as a result of that. And that's taken quite a bit of work internally. This was one of the initiatives when I joined Cifas. I saw an opportunity. Obviously, we've had to do an awful lot with lawyers to make sure that we're all really comfortable that what's being proposed is legal and ultimately it is going to derive the benefits that we would like. But I think we feel really excited about it. And again, this is just that next step on that journey to being very much more data led. And that our data sharing across sectors is actually having the impact that we know it can do. Until recently, the data that Cifas has always shared has really been the tip of the iceberg, the really good quality, nailed on fraudulent conduct. These people we have proven to have acted fraudulently. Whereas now we're veering much more down to what information is out there that is suspect, and how can we share that in a really sort of safe and thoughtful way to make sure that we can build a picture as to who is targeting us. Banks, insurers, local councils across the board, and make sure that crime doesn't pay for them.
Yeah. So is this being more preventative then than reactive to the crime?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, usually it's as a result of someone doing something. So it may be a group of individuals making fraudulent applications for bank accounts or loans, products, services. But we can take that and prevent other similar organisations being targeted as well. And if they're forearmed at the start to understand who is making those applications, what device IDs they're using, what entity information is connected with that individual, then they're better able to block those applications and have a good justification for saying, well, actually, no, we don't want to be doing business with that person.
Yeah.
It's for potentially criminal gain.
Yeah.
And they've got a really strong position there to say that doesn't suit us and our business. And that's quite right that they should be able to stop that. It's to all of our advantage.
Right, okay. And we were talking about Companies House and the part that they should play, ideally, in taking accountability, because essentially anyone can start a business on Companies House. Is that right?
It is right. And it's just the way it's been set up before now, that Companies House were there as a utility to enable businesses to set up and start running. What they haven't been there for is to do an awful lot of validation, and they haven't been operationally set up to do that.
No.
Whereas one of the new bills going through Parliament at the moment, I think it's just had royal assent, will see them really increasing their capability over the next couple of years,
right.
To make sure that it's much harder for those people that have got unwise interests in setting up businesses to have to validate it. They have to pay more to set up companies. There'll be an awful lot more checks and balances in place to make sure that the businesses that are being set up are honest, real businesses, hopefully not preventing honest business people from setting up.
I was going to say, because the minority ruin it for the majority, essentially, don't they? And it's just an easy platform.
Exactly.
I think for me, maybe it took about 5 minutes to do.
Yes, exactly, which is great in many respects.
I enjoyed
and I'm glad you didn't have too many hurdles to jump through. But at the same time, unfortunately, it is far too easy for those that want to game the system.
Yeah.
And once you've got a company number and you've got that gravitas behind you of having set up a company, it can fool people into thinking that you are legitimate when it might be anything otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy now. Like, you have to, I think an obvious one is who you got the email from, then check the domain, or sometimes they're a bit wild. But others are more sophisticated. I mean, I don't know if this one was fraud, but the one recently is the, hi mum, my friend's got my phone.
Yeah.
Can you send me some money? And my mum rang me. She's like, is everything okay, Emma? I was like, yeah, why? But it's just, it does play on the vulnerable, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, oh, mother, child's in need. I mean, obviously she didn't go through the other steps, but
good for her.
But I recognise, oh, that's stupid. And then others, I'm like, is this legitimate? Is this? I can't work it out.
And I read all the time and talk to a lot of our members who deal with customers who have been targeted and feel really silly, but they've caught them at a vulnerable time, that they're busy, that you react on the hoof. You've got your phone on you all the time, all day long. I'll get an email from Royal Mail saying, I'm trying to deliver your parcel. We get parcels delivered all the time. It's very easy to become duped, but that's why they're so clever, in that they're sort of targeting that lifestyle where we're always there. We've got our phones on us. It's connected to all of our bank accounts. It's very easy to transfer money.
Yes.
And one of the conversations that's going on at the moment in the banking world is, where can we add a bit of friction to payments? We don't want to inconvenience consumers in any way, but how can we add enough friction into the journey so that payments that we think are suspects, or transactions that we think aren't going to be ending up in the right hands, can be validated, and getting consumers to think twice before.
Sure.
And it's not just about thinking twice, but go and speak to family and friends. Go and just check with someone you're thinking about whether you want to go ahead with that. Do your checks. What you should probably do as you get a call from your bank is to put the phone down, ring the bank back on a number that you've got for them to make sure that you're speaking to the right person. It's just getting consumers to stop and take 5.
And also what you want to do is let consumers know that you're there to help, because if I get a block payment, I'm like, this is so annoying. Or if it takes me a long time and the NatWest are like, are you sure this is for X, Y and Z? I'm like, can you just let me do it? But we're just so used to instant gratification now. We do need to, like you said, take a step back and think, okay, let me think about this.
Yeah, I think our lifestyles are now, everything is instant.
Yes,
and
it is,
we want everything now. You know, Amazon's been amazing in many respects, but it's set the bar high in terms of everything is super easy at a click of a button. And banking has obviously come a long way as well in terms of enabling transactions to be made super quickly. And it's really important that we don't let friction get in the way of the majority's journey and ability to access their own money. However, the banks do an awful lot of really good work identifying transactions that don't look to be okay, or they are a concern. And I think it's okay to add a little bit of friction into that to make sure that the consumer is protected first and foremost, but naturally the bank needs to be protected if they have regulatory obligations as well to make sure that they aren't facilitating fraud and financial crime. If they think money is going into the hands of criminals, we need to understand that they also have an obligation. Might mean an extra phone call, or it might mean a couple of extra steps in our process, but where you're sending an awful lot of money through, I'm sure everyone would appreciate that extra step to make sure that you and everybody else is safe.
Absolutely. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm just having a shopping day. Leave me alone. Actually, I probably should stop. Thank you.
Thank you for the reminder. I will wind my neck in.
Exactly. So in terms of the space then, what are you most excited about in terms of advancements that you foresee in the next, say, 5 years?
Yeah. I mean, there's an awful lot. For us particularly, it's around developing our analytics capability, and I'm really excited about that. And utilising skill and capability from third parties and partners of ours to help us on that journey. So there'll be an awful lot of work done in that space, which I can't wait for. But it's also sort of utilising and benefiting from other technologies. I mean, AI is, of course, the most talked about thing of the moment. And again, we've explored sort of where we can best use AI, both from an operational perspective, but also staying alive to how could that be really disruptive to our business and to our members. How is AI going to become in a really big problem for us in terms of, you know, facial recognition and sort of voice simulation are threats to the industry, as well as there's huge benefits to be had as well. So we need to be really staying cognizant of where technology is going and keeping close to partners and new advancements to make sure that we can leverage them where it makes sense to understand them and just also make sure we've got a policy position on some of them as well, rather than diving in. I think sometimes particularly when you're an organisation that works across such a substantial number of members, or a not-for-profit organisation as well, we have a responsibility to act professionally and cautiously with a lot of these things, and we also really act for consumers too. So we're very conscious of making sure that we stay informed and stay ahead of where some of these changes are happening, so that we can make best use of them while also making sure that we protect ourselves and those partners around us too.
Yeah, I was going to say, I read an article that was quite interesting on AI about the wonder and fear, and like being two camps. It's like, you can be in both camps. So the sensible thing is to be in both camps, like what is possible, but also let's take a step back, because of course for you, like the criminals are going to be utilising AI. So it's finding that balance, I suppose.
I totally agree with that, you know, no one would ever say don't use AI.
Of course,
clearly that's ridiculous, because there's an awful lot of business efficiencies to be made from being able to automate a lot of stuff, which means you free up resource to do much more exciting things.
Yes, that's what we want.
We're doing the same thing internally, looking at, you know, how we can actually free some of our teams up from doing some really laborious work that can be taken off them by AI, so that it frees them up to do more exciting things. However, we're definitely we're doing an awful lot of work and have a lead at the moment on looking at sort of AI from a number of different perspectives, and where it could really pose us some challenges, where we need to be extra cautious. So I think, go with it, explore, find out more, sort of see how it can work for your business, but always be really conscious that it isn't a silver bullet, and it usually needs a human intervention to make sure that we don't come unstuck. I think, again, knowledge is still power here.
Yes.
The human element to AI is so important. At the same time, it's also its downfall. I've been doing a lot of reading about, and certainly women in data have done quite a lot of work on sort of informing us about the prevalence of bias in a lot of sort of AI models. And certainly I attended an event at Lloyd's a week or so ago about exactly that. And it's just sort of being cognizant of bias, unconscious bias usually, but that can seep into AI and modelling that we need to just be a bit more informed about.
Absolutely. I spoke to a hiring manager who was using AI to go through CVs, which I thought, I get that, but then because these people don't have those 5 words that you're searching for, you're not even going to ever look at their profile, which just leaves out. So again, you're going to have a load of people that basically have the same skill set ultimately. So it is dangerous.
And there's a risk, isn't there, with hiring that, everyone wants to hire diverse teams that bring a lot of different skills and abilities to a team to make up a really good culture where everyone sort of feels included, by using quite crude measures to weed out CVs, there's a huge risk of sort of missing those creative people that actually could bring an awful lot to a team. So I would be a little bit wary about using those.
Maybe that was just an excuse, so you didn't have to work
though,
with me.
When you've got 1,000 applications for some jobs, I'm sure it's tempting, but you've got to have some way of reducing them. But I would always be a bit wary.
Yes, me too. Okay, so we're going to move on to the quick fire data lightning round.
I'm excited.
What's one common misconception about data that you'd like to debunk?
I think it's that it is scary. Data is scary, and I get that. People have different skills in different areas. Some people are thrive there and they're very mathematical. Others are very good in terms of sort of verbal or and language. And again, I'm someone that, wasn't ever particularly mathematical or scientific, but I love data and I see the huge power that data and data sharing brings. And so I would very strongly say, get stuck in. There's lots of different uses of data and there's something for everyone. And the more, I think we also have a responsibility to sort of help people to understand how data can help them. So the more that we can engage with businesses within our business, outside of our business, to work out uses of data to suit lots of different use cases, the more you can demystify it for those that don't think that they're particularly techie. Yeah,
it's a good, and I'm no good at maths, so I'm not interested in data. And it's like, and we've spoken about coming from a STEM background, which is great, and we're advocates of that, but it's not the only path by any means.
No, absolutely. And, we definitely have got a lot of work to do to promote STEM subjects to females, because there's still quite a disparity there. But that also doesn't mean you have to have a STEM background to be sort of data centric or strategic in that respect. So I think there's a lot of skills that can be brought to the table to a data-led business.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, number 2. Name a book, event or podcast that you think every data enthusiast should explore.
Well, of course, I should say the Women in Data podcast, which I listen to frequently.
Yeah, it's great.
And always really enjoy. I like the breadth of topics that they cover. There's usually something, some little nugget or takeaway for me. And
their event, obviously, that we've spoken about.
Exactly, yes. I also am a big fan of the Zoe study. I don't know if you've heard of it. No. It's a personalised nutrition programme, very sort of, again, data-centric.
He was on the podcast, the chap, the doctor.
So Tim Spector was one of the co-founders.
Follow him.
I recently participated in that study and it's been, a real eye-opener for me and my family.
Yeah.
And again, it's all built on, you know, using the power of data to start shaping personalised nutrition for individuals, make better choices for them personally. So yeah, I'm really keen on a personal level. That's quite a big thing for me.
Wow, yeah, I love that. I did actually listen to another podcast with another doctor the other day, and he said about we should all be CEOs of our bodies, and rather than relying on a feeling, rely on KPIs.
I love that.
And he was talking about the 10 main KPIs, for example, vitamin D. And I was like, yes, this is so interesting.
I love
Data
that.
is just everywhere.
I think, again, knowledge is power, and
Yeah,
it's the same
of
in our
course.
personal lives as well. It's so important to stay informed about what, you know, what we're putting in ourselves and what, you know, what is going on around us. And you know, time is tight for most people. Everyone's got busy lives, but yeah, I think the more we can get back to some basics, some whole cooking and preparing things in a simple way ourselves, rather than relying on, you know, mass produced chemical driven foods, the better. Yeah.
And he was also saying, you know, rather than relying on a feeling, maybe now you feel fine, but these deficiencies play out in later years. You know, so you need to serve and look after your future self.
Absolutely.
But yeah, very
I totally agree.
Love that. Okay, number 3. If you could offer one piece of advice to someone just starting their journey into the world of data, what would it be?
I think actually just listen and learn. I think going and speaking to as many different people as possible. Don't be shy about not knowing things. Don't be shy about asking questions and being curious. Being curious is such an important skill. And I do think it's a skill rather than just a basic characteristic. I think it's something you can learn. And again, that comes down to these sort of soft skills, the people skills. Is, you know, I don't know many people that if asked whether they can help mentor somebody or just, you know, answer a few questions for someone new joining an organisation in a data role would say, oh no, I don't have time for them. I mean, very few leaders would do that, because you need to nurture talent coming into the business and support them along that journey in the way that we've all been supported on our journeys. And it's the people that have been very impactful on you that stick in your memory. So yeah, absolutely, the biggest piece of advice is just, you know, reach out, don't be shy, you know, be brave, ask questions, be inquisitive, and just suck up all the knowledge you can to get a real breadth of perspective on data, how it impacts, you know, business and the world around us. Is really important.
Absolutely. I work with someone who says the only silly question you ask, the only silly question is the one you don't ask.
Yes, absolutely. You're too shy to ask.
Yeah, because we've all been there, haven't we? Like,
of course we have.
Oh, I should have asked that. Or at the end, everyone goes up to the person like, can we just ask you a question? And we're like, we did have 10 minutes of questioning just then.
Everyone's a bit too shy. I mean, I get it in a big environment, particularly in some of these conferences. There's, you know, hundreds of people, not always very easy to form an articulate question. But, you know, go prepared for these things.
Absolutely.
You know, make yourself known, and again, make connections with people. It's really important.
And those questions that may seem silly, it's like everyone also wants to know the answer, but also didn't want to ask that one question.
Or we've all asked it in the past.
Yeah,
so it's fine.
we have. Okay, love it. Number 4, finish this sentence. Data is the key to
unlocking potential. I think it's just, there's just so many opportunities, so many different uses of data for so many different use cases, that it genuinely is power. And if you can go to somebody in a position of power and evidence an idea or a suggestion with data in your back pocket to back it up, it's incredibly useful and compelling to be able to say, look, you know, this is what I found, this is real, this is out there. So there's an awful lot of potential for data, and we really haven't even scraped the surface, particularly in our sector. We do an awful lot of great data sharing, but there's even more to be done. And I genuinely think we can resolve this fraud problem that we've got, and protect more people.
Amazing. And number 5, what can companies do to encourage more females to become leaders or ultimately go into data roles?
That's a really good question. I think we need to be so much more mindful about nurturing female talent with the lens of females aren't very good at advocating for themselves a lot of the time. And I think the more senior leaders we have that are female, the more they understand that as females in a business, joining a business, you need someone to advocate for you. You need mentors to help try to sort of get your potential, you work into your potential. And I think a lot of the time it does take a female to sort of appreciate that there is, nervousness and imposter syndrome and, a different mindset to men and about success and career path. So the more women can support other women, the better. But if you don't have any women in senior positions that are able to do that, then the problem isn't ever going to change. We're going to carry on having a real problem with a real lack of female talent in senior positions, because they're just not very good at presenting their own talents and articulating them and driving hard and fighting for what they probably deserve.
Yeah, and that's where the power of role models comes in as well.
Absolutely.
And I think the Women in Data, that was a theme, wasn't it? See, believe, be.
Yeah.
And that's why Jill Scott was so amazing, because now she's a role model for younger footballers coming through, but I don't think she didn't have a role model.
I'm sure. So, and if you do have a role model, it might be in a very different sector, and you have to try and draw parallels. But I don't think it should be sort of sector specific. I think there's an awful lot that we can do to promote more mentoring and allow advancement for females cross sector, and make sure that they have the confidence to be able to to really fight for what they deserve.
Absolutely, I agree. Well, thank you. You're amazing.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I think they underestimate what it takes to move data. But it also gives you a great opportunity to get it right for the future. You can draw a line in the sand and say, look, let's commit to this. Let's get it into a good state, and then let's maintain that good state of data.